Agenda here is a public comment. There are any folks who would like to make a if for Teams virtual meeting participants, if you're on the phone, press *5. You can look for a hand icon that varies by device, but it may be shown in the meeting controls at the top of the screen. Autumn, is anyone indicating a desire to make comments?
Gabrielle, I see that you're online. You'd like to make public comment. You're free to unmute.
No comments.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Seeing no public comments, we can move on to our next agenda item, which is we're going to turn that over to Autumn. We're going to be focusing on creating some scenarios and trying to get some consensus on those scenarios based on the priorities that we previously discussed. So take it away. Oh, sorry, meeting minutes. Any comments on those? Any additions? Okay. We can approve those by consent.
All right, welcome this evening. Thank you for being here on such a sunny day. I'm actually glad it's not tomorrow. So that's supposed to be even sunnier and hotter. So thanks for spending your evening again with us. We will catch up those that missed our last meeting. Felt like there were several folks who had other things going on in their lives. So I'm glad you're all back. To start out, I'm going to start each of our meetings with just going through our project goals as a reminder, just to kind of set a base for us as we work tonight on getting through what some of our scenarios are going to be. So project goals are ensuring safety, and that's both of our employees, but also our community, thanks to our police department. Responsibly stewarding public dollars, providing community accessibility and convenience, supporting economic development, delivering enhanced community amenities, and embodying environmental stewardship. So the agenda for tonight includes, I have some follow-up answers to a few questions that were lingering just to cover. Then we're going to do an overview of what we heard from the last meeting. I think we've made really great progress in the last meeting as far as finding areas of consensus and areas that I think still need some discussion. We're going to then hear from DLR Group on some timelines, very rough order of magnitude timelines, but that was a request by task force members just to give us just a sense of how long some of these things would take. Then we're going to dive into a priority exercise where we're going to really rate our priorities using some stickers, and we've got some sheets up on the walls behind you. So we'll work on that. And then from that, we're really hoping to leave tonight with some clear ideas of some scenarios that we can then work with DLR Group to come back with you and have just more tangible, just options for us to talk through. So that's the plan for tonight. Does that sound good, everybody? Okay. Great. So a couple just follow-ups from the last meeting. There was a question around our survey results online by demographic. So I picked one. Would take a lot of staff resources and effort to do all of them, but if there are specific questions where you would like the demographics, I can pull those for you. I pulled one just about what people are coming to City Hall for, or what they'd like to see as far as service by demographic. Most of our respondents were residents, and you can see they were mostly interested in just general customer service support and just having the city there if needed. And then following by human services, which I described. I think folks then, I didn't use the right word, I think, is human services to describe. I think that people were thinking more customer service, and they were human services for those who may need extra support in our community. And then permitting was the other one. So you can kind of see the breakdown there, the type of customers, both resident, representative of a local organization, professional services, businesses, and other. If there's any other questions from the survey, again, that you'd like to see broken down by demographic, I can provide that to you. The next was some data on our front counter customers. So I sent this via email. but wanted to highlight it here as well. I also wanted to correct myself. I misspoke at our last meeting. So our police department does have a front counter that is open to the public. And there is someone there to support folks who come to the front counter. If someone's not there, they also have a bell so that they can easily respond. But I think there are times where folks may be confused and go upstairs as well. That's why you're seeing some folks who said that they were there for police related service. But the majority of our data shows in the past, since 2023 and 2024, most customers that are coming to City Hall are coming for the permit center, followed then by police related questions, then utility billing, and then our court. And that's just, people are confused about where the court is because we have City Hall, City Hall South, we have several buildings. And so a lot of it is in direction. You'll see that at City Hall. We have a lot of signage about this isn't court, or this is, you know, just the wayfinding has been challenging, I think. So we do have folks who come upstairs at City Hall looking for the court. And then other, and actually just before I came to this meeting, I was speaking with a woman that works at our front counter. She said she gets questions about any and everything, whether it's government related or not, whether they live in Sammamish or they live in Issaquah, whether it's just, it runs the gamut. And she said that every day is different. So these are the main categories of in-person customer service, but there's a lot of others that you'll see in the other category that just need support or need somewhere to go to ask a question. So any questions on that? Okay. There was a question around some benefits of having the adjacency of staff with our customer service desk. Or, you know, we talked about, is there a possibility that we have a desk that's separate from where most of our staff would be working? And talking with some of our staff, some responses where, you know, folks do like having quick access to our customers to answer their questions right away. There's a stronger connection to the community that we're serving if we're there day to day, you know, with those who are coming for service. It's easier to host meetings. Many times we're going off site as staff to other places to find a meeting space or to meet with larger groups. And conference rooms are a high priority. Our next slide, we were doing some staff surveys, especially coming out of COVID, asking folks a lot of questions around what they needed for hybrid work or what other support they needed. So I only have data from 21 and 23. I don't have anything more recent than that, but provided some input on our staff survey as far as how important it was for staff to have access to customers. And about little under 40% said it was the average importance for them. What was higher in priority was access to coworkers. So for having that synergy of working with each other was important to our staff. And then you'll see too, there's also a graph on just access to conference room or meeting spaces. Put this in here again, and this was talked about and covered by our chairs last time. And the idea, and I think, you know, for some who may not have been in our last meeting, there was just a discussion around what's the end product here and how are we getting there, and the idea of reaching consensus. So consensus is in the absence of unanimous agreement, decisions may be reached when most members of the task force agree on a clear option, and those who may oppose it say they have a reasonable opportunity to influence the choice and will support the final decision. So there was a discussion among those that were here last time. This is a very large group, and there's a variety of opinions. And so we just talked a lot about, you know, and the goal of being at some point reaching consensus. So put that back up here just as a reminder for those that were in our last meeting. All right, so here's a breakdown of what we heard, and let me know if we're off the mark here on any of this. But as far as agreements, we heard there is a very near-term need to address police space needs. I think that is a given among everyone, and that will be a clear recommendation back to the council that is a priority. Also, it's important to locate the customer service center with administrative offices. There was support generally from the group on that, as well as maximizing the use of city-owned properties. So looking first at the properties we already own before looking at spending money on purchasing additional property. Everybody feel okay with that in general? Okay. And then some varied views that we heard was on location. You know, there were several with a preference to locate City Hall in Old Town. Others supported Central Issaquah. Others said whatever's cheaper. It's not that much of a priority, you know, among other things. The adjacencies to other services or parks or public open space. I had called this kind of a civic campus before, but really it's just what do we want City Hall to be near? Is it important that it's around those other dynamic services or not? And then the importance of meeting space. And that's not only for staff, but that's for the community. And so we saw a lot of that in the responses to the survey around a lot of community groups, HOAs, other organizations that are looking for other space in our community to have meetings. So we heard some varied views on these. And, we thought as a good next step, there are so many different priorities and factors going on here that it'd be interesting to see what your priorities are, what's most important. So is most important that we make sure that police space is addressed? Or is it most important that we make sure that staff remain close to a front counter? So looking for kind of what is most important for you so that we can really start to combine a few of these into some scenarios that are tangible, where we can provide you some more information on them, that there can be some more robust discussion as a group. Okay, and now moving on to Lori.
Yep, so we put timeframes for different options for what we talked about last time. They're based on similar project that we've done in the past and how long it's taken. Now, keep in mind that as you're going through and we're talking about renovation, especially the police renovation, there could be a multitude of phases. I just put some phases in there, assuming they were longer, but there could be a bunch of short, smaller phases. So just, this is a general overall view of it. So first of all, just to give you an understanding of how long it takes to hire a designer for the project. So DLR Group was hired to do this planning study. We were not hired to design anything. So there would have to be an RFP and that whole process coming up. And generally speaking, each one of these lines, just so you know, is about a month. So that'll take 6-ish months to hire and have fully under contract an AE firm, if that's the design route delivery method the city chooses to use.
AE firm?
But a architecture and engineering firm. There are other delivery methods, design build, that would add time to the process, because you have to go in front of the state CPARB committee to get approval. Same thing for a GCCM project, you would have to go in front of the state CPARB. Yeah,
GCCM?
I'm gonna explain it.
Okay.
Those are the two things that would make you go in front of another regulatory body. So the way you can deliver projects is design, bid, build. So the architect designs, put the documents on the street, bunch of different firms bid on it, low bid wins. That's design, bid, build. There's also design build, where the city hires the builder who has an architect on your team already based on qualifications and cost. And then that's one entity that the design and builds the project. And then there's this kind of in-between way of delivering a project that's called GCCM, which is construction manager, GCCM. There's different states, general contractor. And that's where the city hires an architect designer. And then before the end of schematic design, which is the first design phase, they hire the contractor based on qualifications to help provide costing, constructability, value engineering, all through the design process, and then they build the project. So those are the three different methods. Yeah.
And just as a clarification, typically if a contractor is hired for pre-construction, there are two different contracts, and there's the option that the owner has not proceeding to construction with that firm if things don't work out.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's probably a little bit of a negotiation period after 75% construction documents.
But yeah, depending on how the projects go. I've only had one project where the owner did not continue with the contractor in that situation. So those are the basic delivery methods. There are variations of each one, of course, but doing anything but design, bid, build, or hard bid delivery will add time to the procurement process. Because you have to go in front of the state and ask permission and prove that you'll know what you're doing before you can use an alternative delivery method. It's just the way the state of Washington is. So that'll take about 6 months. And then time frame to move City Hall to lease space, assuming there's a lease space that we can move into, and we do minimal updates to it as much as possible, move in the way it is. That's about a 13-month process from site selection all the way to move-in. Due to doing the site selection, negotiating and getting a lease. You have to design and permit for what changes you do want to make. Then construction always takes longer than you think it's going to take. And then move-in takes about a month, depending on how you do it. So that's about the time frame for moving city hall functions into a lease space. Okay, and then if you're gonna renovate, put the whole building for police, the most cost-effective, moving fewest walls, changing the fewest things. It's about 10 months to design and permit that. So probably 8 months of design and 2 months of permitting. And then I put in 4 phases. We've done them before, 3 to 4 phases. Some places go to 5 or 6 phases. It just depends on how much moving of staff there is. And so you finish all those and you get to about 33 months as a contractor moves through a building. And staff have to work around it because we're not moving evidence, we're not moving dispatch in the interim, right? We're keeping them in place and having to construct around them. So there's that one. And then to the most comprehensive, we would do design, permitting, in about 13 months. Takes a little bit longer because we have to do more engineering at that point. And then I have 3 phases just because you can't just gut the whole building again. You have to move around people and you're going to be doing that construction. Those take a little bit longer. So this is about 32, 33 months as well. Because there's less phases, but more in depth. And then to build a new city hall, you have to do site selection, and I'm very like 6 months would be a good amount of time, especially if you're choosing city-owned property already. But 6 months, hopefully you're choosing, I mean, that would make it much shorter time as if you're choosing city-owned property, longer time if you have to negotiate that contract. 6 months is the average for that. Design is about 12 months. Construction is about 18 months, and then a month to move in. 18 months, I would say it could get done in 14 months, but no contractor on the plan has ever agreed with me on that. So, so we get to about 35 months for that new construction of a city hall. So then if we look at all of them together, you'll see that the most cost-effective renovation, the second one down, starts later than the rest because we have to wait for construction to start when everybody's moved out already. So there's just that overlap of moving city hall to lease space and that project where the design process is not as long by 3 months, that we have the staggered start, if that makes sense. So just to align when we can get in the building after city hall's moved out. That's the one that's moved out a little bit from the start date of basically month 1 of the project. Any questions on that?
This is excellent, thank you.
Sure.
This is excellent.
The comprehensive plan is more like kind of gutting the place. Is that the difference between
Gutting.
cost-effective and?
We are having our engineers look at the seismic report, the structural report, and so preliminarily, he said that any seismic updates would be voluntary and not required by code.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just preliminarily. I will work back on them.
Is that based on the condition of the building? Or
Based on the 2 reports that we were given from the city about the investigations that have already been done. He's interpreting those.
So who decides which of these sequences? Is that this group or?
We're gonna put a recommendation forward.
Okay,
This was just more so you have kind of an idea about, right? Not probably starting and all of them go together, but each piece probably takes about 3 years.
yeah, I know a lot of building and construction people in this room. So,
Yeah, right. So when you say you want to do take care of police right away, it's the most urgent thing, it's still gonna take time.
So,
So for the renovation, City Hall renovation for police, you still have to move staff out of the way, the administrative and executive staff out of the way for either one of those scenarios to play. So we still have to go through the first option, move City Hall to lease space, move City Hall staff to lease space. So that's a given no matter what scenario.
Given. Yeah, because if you renovated police without moving City Hall, you're not really getting police anything they already have. You're not accomplishing anything that's gonna help them other than giving them a headache while you're doing construction.
So then you start stacking these things.
This is them stacked.
Okay.
This is them stacked. So that's why that second one starts a little bit later so that we can start construction after City Hall's moved out.
But you have two police renovations, so.
This is two options of police.
Yeah.
renovations.
Okay, got it.
One is if we keep walls, as many walls as we can, keep as much infrastructure as we can. That's the top one. The second one is if we're just gutting the whole thing and starting from scratch, basically.
And DLR is doing more work on kind of finding those two options. We want some time to talk about that with our police department first. But we'll be coming to this group too with some more detail on both of those options.
Yes.
Laura?
Yeah.
You said that, so for design bid build, that's in comparison to design build would typically be more efficient, but in this case, it's not, because you gotta go to the state to ask for permission to do design build.
In terms of time, it's not more efficient because you don't have a blanket approval to use an alternative. It would add to the, I mean, you could do it as you're overlapping some things, right? But CPARB meets on very regular schedule. You have to get all your consultants in order so that you can show the state that you have the knowledge to do an alternative delivery.
Yeah, and so that's what, and so that's what makes it less efficient time wise. You've got to go to the state.
Kevin? Just looking for clarification on the gutting of the police station. That's not really accurate, because this police would have to move out if you get it. I mean, we're still going to be working around. We have no plan to move the police out of the station.
I think that decision is something that would get made later through the design process. It depends on where certain functions end up. If we're building, let's say we move dispatch to the second floor and we move evidence to the other side of the building, we certainly could work in that building while we're gutting the second floor and then move things.
Okay, but my point was that at no time are we ever going to vacate that building for construction, regardless of these options chosen. I think that's just a clarification, because we are trying to find space to put the police while we work on the police station. It's nowhere in those timelines.
Right, and that's a decision that will get made during the design process.
Yeah, and that's why Lori had some phases in that comprehensive.
Yeah, but again, none of those things detail moving anything other than city hall personnel out of it. So there was always going to have to work around day-to-day operations in the police station, regardless of the amount of work that we recommend doing.
That's our current assumption that we would be working around.
I think it's a pretty big assumption, because if you're gonna, when I hear the word gut, I think like, it's a big empty shell, you start building it again. People can't work in the big empty shell, no power, no HVAC, no electric, no plumbing, so, that keeping people in place is certainly a complication.
Yeah, it would be a more strategic surgical gutting, so you would gut the second floor first and do whatever you can there, and then gut different portions of the first floor to get there. So, yes, you're right. It's just, there's not enough information now to know how that's gonna play out.
Right, well, in my time with my employer before I retired, I've seen all of these things happen.
Yeah.
Including working in a partially disassembled building to be moved to another location while they tore the interior room.
Yep.
So there's another scenario, it's probably not on the meeting the police needs preferred scenario, but that is you put city hall funding and construction of a new city hall first. And then when that's completed, you move on police. So you get administrative staff out into the new city hall facility. And then you move on.
It doesn't, I mean, it's still, it's just a variation of this, right? So,
Right.
yeah.
And there are other variables to add to the equation here. If we talk a little bit more about funding.
Yes, so, yes, we're gonna talk about funding here in a second. Yes, all that's true.
So for clarification on the timeline, so I heard a couple of different things, but from the way I understand your timeline is that City Hall would be moved out, probably in the lease space right away, and then the construction would start on the police station with the police department still in there, and then moved around within the building when you're working on other parts of the building.
Right.
Which is less efficient, but you gotta do it this way.
For some specific, especially for some specific parts of the police station.
Yeah. Okay. And then another question for Autumn or somebody. As far as lease space, has the city started looking for lease space yet?
Yeah, we have taken tours and looked at some lease space for
Pardon me?
office. We have taken tours over the
Okay.
past several years, looking at lease space. There are some opportunities for leased. We won't have as much choice on location, right? It's just on what's
It has to
available.
be a spot.
It has to be in a spot, yes. Yeah, you know, our broker asked that question of our city council, and it was like, yes, we do.
How much space?
It depends on how much we're moving. I think. I'll have to go back and look at the square footage number.
Originally, we were looking at about 28.
28?
28,000.
Yeah. But just like, Chair Brennan just brought up, another option is find a home for City Hall first and then improve PD, right? That's the other option. So I think that's right, which is what we want to talk about today too, is like, what is most important to get done first? So.
Yeah, that was related to my question. So my suggestion doing City Hall and police, does that mean it's 6 years before the police station is renovated? If it's 3 years for the whole City Hall, 32 months. City Hall, then another 32 months.
If you don't move police, if you do City Hall, new City Hall construction first.
Yes. Okay, I just want to be clear with that.
Well, then the other thing with that, your cost of construction is gonna go way up. Right? So there's two reasons for sense of urgency. A, the cost of construction, and B, the police need a more safe work environment. Soon, now.
We've been very patient over here.
My question was related to what Mike brought up. Was there a time frame created for permanent housing for City Hall staff, which I thought was one of our priorities? Because otherwise, if all these are based on just moving into lease space, we're kicking that can down the road at having to find permanent housing later. And maybe that's your answer with the City Hall new construction takes priority. City Hall employees are moved and then police. Right. That's it. Okay.
So I think there's a permutation, we can make a permutation of any scenarios out of these timelines here.
These are more just like the generic blocks of how long will it take to do these different things? Then you can put them in different orders or all together or spread apart or really spread apart.
Right? They just can't be overlapped. You can't
Right.
not move City Hall and do the whole thing, right?
Yeah, there's a critical path.
There's a critical.
Yes.
So following along those lines, what does PD think about taking a backseat to the renovation and just getting back their space? Right? We move City Hall personnel out while a City Hall is being built. And then the PD, they don't get the improvements, they just get their space back. How does that play out? Do we have any information on that? Would they be acceptable of that permutation?
Not to speak for police. I'm looking because we have a member of the police department in the room tonight, but I think there's one thing is space, the other is just all the functionality that you saw right in your tour around.
We're not trying to that permutation doesn't remove the eventual functional improvements, but it does kick that can down the road about 3 years. And is that too far? Right? Because I know that
For this group.
Yeah, I've got
Yeah.
to see, but,
Yeah.
but again, we have to try to balance it all together, because we know there's all these functional issues. But they're, I think, from my perception, they were extremely exacerbated by the space issues. So they got space back, could they then work within that space to get alleviate some of the functional issues, the bias to 3 years? You know, because again, it's, no matter what you do, it's gonna, it takes time, and the more you move things around and work around, the more costly it's gonna be.
I think some of it, yes, is space, but some of it is functional needs, like we wouldn't be rehabbing the locker rooms. And you saw the issues with that, or, you know, how easy would it be to make more room for dispatch? If it was just space, that would be very difficult. So I think,
I'm not,
yeah,
I don't discount any of that, I'm just wondering from the permutation standpoint, because we moved City Hall into lease space. Then that could be almost a 6-year period that you're in lease space, right?
Yeah.
And what's the dollar amount for that, right? That's another cost, that's part of this. If you cut that in half, does that give us money then to play with other things that are also, right? It's all balancing act.
So I'd like to hear from some other community task force.
So I think there are improvements that need to be made to that building for public safety, regardless of anything else, more than just space. But there is an interesting question here around timing. And the question that I would be interested to know, and Chief Schwan would say, is, you know, if one option was a situation where you had construction going on, if you went police forward, and did the police stuff first, and you had sort of contortions you had to do operationally to make that happen, right? Versus doing the city hall element first, getting the city hall out of there, and then doing the police things. Which of those has a smaller impact on public safety to the police department? That's the one that I think would be sort of interesting, right? I don't know what the chief would say, but this idea of getting the city hall folks out first and then doing the police improvements, versus trying to do the police improvements as you're figuring out the city hall piece, because I think that ultimately city council has said that public safety continues to be really, really critical, and any operational impacts to public safety would be a real problem.
Any other comments on timelines and options?
go last one.
Get my head around all of the sequencing. So one option would be like do all of it together, and this depends on funding and availability. Like in the best of all possible worlds, do it all together, get the city hall staff out, have construction on a new city hall on existing property. At the same time, the rebuild of the police station that's going on, is that feasible thing, sort of logistically for some staff, or budgets, things like that. And maybe that's the next set of things to talk about. But it seems like that's how to get everything done in 32 months. In any sequencing, someone's going to be homeless for 5 years. Or there's going to be issues for 5 years. Is this going to be a 3-year or a 5-year? Seems to be the bottom line. And then all those other issues tied in. I don't know if that's a question, just like. That's right, but I'm trying to like, again, not my world. Like how quickly do we want to get all this done?
Right.
In the ideal world, and then what's the reality and the doable?
Oh, gosh, but I won't pretend to have a solution for any of this, but the lease options, have you guys explored trailers, on site, or some other sort of relocation housing on a property where city staff could go to instead of leasing a space for several years?
Not for that amount of square footage.
Okay, so yeah,
Yep.
I'm just curious, like a
Table
little,
tents.
we don't want to do that, but a little bit of musical chairs with space. Not a great option for
I know.
a duration.
Yeah,
Too.
yeah.
Yeah, you're looking at like a Safeway size space.
Oh, that's what they know. Well, thank you for giving me a building block to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. I was just mulling over, Galen's comments, with potential to just give the police back their space, but necessarily, kick the cost of the renovation down the road. And if we did it that way, that means we would have to go back to the public for additional funding down the road, I'm assuming. And would that also then be a retention or a recruiting issue? Because I know from the last meeting, which I did watch all 2 hours, that one of the things that was discussed with our facilities is that we need better police facilities in order to both recruit and retain our existing police force. Which when I was watching that discussion, the thought occurred to me, where are they going and what are the police stations like at these other municipalities? I mean, are they that great? I'd love to go see them. We should arrange a field. Because I think we have a pretty nice police station. I mean, it's aging and it's cramped, I know, but.
Jonathan?
Did we take off the list to move City Hall to a purchased existing office building? Seems like there's a lot of office space available in the area. Is that off the table?
Not off the table. It's really to find a property that is on the market, that's ready to sell to government, and take longer to make a decision. You know, we had one piece that we were looking at for a period, with some true interest, but it's so rare. But no, it's not off the table, and that could be,
Not
yeah, there's not the availability, and a lot of that too, and again, you don't have that much, many options on the location. So a lot of things have to fit together with the right time for that to work, and then for the city to have the money to buy it. So a lot of those things have to align for that to be an option, but could be one, right? And so that's part of it too, is, you know, as part of a recommendation to council, as you kind of tier what those priorities are, if there's a great thing that just pops up on the market while we're leasing, let's say, right? You know, that could still be very much an option. It's just, we've been shopping now for a couple of years. There hasn't been very many viable properties.
It can be similar to like the moving to a leased space, you kind of go
Yeah.
through the same process.
The
It's a
city of
little-
Kent just did that exact project. All of a sudden, we were doing a master plan for their downtown campus. They found a building that wasn't downtown, off kind of the beaten path. They purchased that building, they're moving City Hall in, they're giving police their City Hall building. And that's how they're solving this same issue you all have.
It can be awkward, I would say, for the city to buy buildings. You know, in that if you appear to be in competition with the private sector, but we are also the permitting agency. Sometimes that doesn't look quite right.
It seems like it's a lot.
Yeah.
Pretty nice.
Yeah, there's not a ton of availability of the size we're looking for. Yeah, unless we were buying like a couple floors, you know, or there's really large properties. But it's hard to find the sweet spot of what we've been looking for.
Yeah, I was just thinking about Galen's comments and both. And as far as trying to push the police department renovation or portion longer term, I think that runs into a few different problems. I mean, one, you're gonna end up with costs every 3 years down the road. I think that's a big part of it. Two, you're probably not gonna have get in there while half of the building is already cleaned out. But I think that's part and parcel of good and effective communication with the community, right? We're the ones that have to go out there and explain to them. You know, we're trying to be creative using existing spaces. We're not building a fancy police department. So we like our police department, we like the architecture of it, but it's an older building. It's 25 years old. I think again, when those, you know, bonds or levies are put forward, that's going to be up to, you know, part of this task force responsibilities to go out there and talk to the community. Obviously the people that put it together, but I think that's kind of how you have to sell it, because we're using existing spaces. And we're bringing the cost down because of it, but the building itself is old, I think. Tola made the comment, but it's also a safety issue. And I think we all were down there, you see the way that prison, and I know the prison is kind of a different discussion.
It's a jail, but yes.
Yeah, jail, but again, there, you know, you've also got, you have, I believe, you know, up to 50 given people you're responsible for. So you have to be safe for them too, not just the employees. So there's a lot of things. I don't think if you're going to make the effort, it seems strange to kick that down the road farther. You already have a lot of pieces of the puzzle with people moving out. And then I think to Roy's point, that's how remodels work. If you've ever lived through one, they're tough, but people do it all the time.
People usually will do it because they know what they're getting from the other. So they
Right.
put up.
But whether it's a house or whether it's a bigger project, I mean, it's all, you just balance it. Like you said, it's not necessarily great efficiency, but it's the only thing we have. And not every homeowner can afford to rent somewhere with a remodel their house. And
Yeah.
Issaquah, you can't, right?
Holly,
Hi, I'm here from the PD.
Come on up, Holly. Come on up.
I'm not know all of you, but, I'm happy to be here and say my little 2 cents on behalf of the department. First of all, thank you guys for all the support that you guys are doing. It's awesome and we love it. I would say, we don't want to wait 5 years. It's very sad. But, for most of us, I would say, the safety concern, we have some major safety, concerns, like our front counter. We had a recent experience that kind of thankfully was averted and didn't turn to a crisis level, but it was just another example of, our front window counter. I think we almost come to the PD behind me the other day, when I was back by accident. But, those are all some of the major safety concerns. Yes, with our jail downstairs. And so we really, would like to have the space sooner than later. I understand balance with upstairs and everything, but, safety is definitely a big thing. Yes, we are smushed in there and we make, do with what we can, but, we're very anxious to have some more space as well, but.
And our PD is amazing. Issaquah is a fantastic agency. It's a PD. And I think to Mitch's point earlier, I mean, the retention piece is big. I mean, we want people to come and put their applications in for Issaquah, right? Police officers stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. And it is always fun to go to our other departments to see what others do have it worse than us. But there are a lot that have it.
It's pretty great.
Yeah, we have a lot more bodies.
thanks, Holly.
Yeah, this is picking up on the comments about, I mean, I'd hate for this to get burned like the transportation task force that was on a bunch of years ago. The new high schools and like starting to think about how to communicate this to the community now and testing and like avoiding. And I don't know that there've been a lot of other big bonds and projects and requests for funding of those who should happen, but I was just getting anxious thinking about that and started talking. It was like, yeah, so I think that's really that may already be in the plan to do, but like understanding how we can do that and how the timing of that fits in. So that all this work actually something.
Get to Galen in a second, but are there any other comments from people?
All right, well, first of all, I hate to be the poster child for this particular idea. Because I was just kind of going, well, when you look at these kind of waterfall layouts with a 6-year time frame, basically doing one project and another. Then two things came to mind. One was the Payne Express that, if we just get this, if we free up the space for the PD building, what can be done in that area that doesn't require kind of a targeted improvements that are the most important ones, right? Because now the space is available. It's like you don't tear down your house to remodel your kitchen, right? As an example. Or the other part of it is, why does it have to be this project, then that project, when effectively they can be done in parallel once the administrative folks are out of the PD building.
My understanding, just clarification, I don't understand where everyone's getting the 5 and 6 years. That actually shows 3 years. That's 3 years. Yeah.
As if you did them sequentially.
Right, right. Yeah, I get if you did it, but the idea would try to be, we don't want to lease for 6 years. You'd want to kind of do the city hall pieces together.
Well, it's also a matter of funding, right?
It's funding that's gonna.
It's a matter of funding, because if there's
And
There's only gonna be so much money available on any given period, then you might have to push it up. Right, I mean, that wouldn't be my choice, I mean, because logically, these two projects can be done in parallel, because they're not in the same location. Right? They're close by, but they're not the same building, trying to do different things.
I just want to respond to John's comments and questions regarding the city still having, or this task force still having on the table, the option to purchase and renovate. Oddity said that their city had looked at several properties, but we haven't seen the properties the city's looked at. But I know one of them that's been on the market for like 10 years, and it's probably one that the city looked at, was the building where Virginia Mason was. You know, the building I'm talking about.
Swedish?
Yes. Yeah, sorry.
Swedish, yeah.
It's been on the market for a long time. Yeah. But was that building looked at all?
I don't want to talk too much about like any of the, just as far as property acquisition goes, too much of that publicly. But we've looked at a lot of properties. Yes,
Well, I would assume that was.
yeah.
I mean, it was the cheapest option. I think that's appealing, and I know we're trying to, be efficient with the public's money, especially when it's gonna go up for a vote, but it seems like there was a consensus made in the last meeting, and maybe it wasn't rubber stamped. Tell me if there was a consensus made to keep City Hall in Old Town and have that campus feel. Is that correct? There wasn't a.
No, it was mixed input on that as far as location.
Okay.
Yeah.
So will we have a chance to vote on that or
Yep.
to come to a consensus?
Let's do it. Yes, working on that later today. Yeah.
All right.
Clearly ready.
We looked at a lot of properties that were really big.
Yeah.
So if you think about our need is, say, 30,000 square feet, some of the buildings that are available are 90,000 or 120,000 or something like that. But
You could become a landlord and then make money for the.
Yeah.
okay. Yes, that would be the option.
You get it back in the development.
Yeah.
We'll talk about conference space.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be different. It'd be a lot.
Sports.
This is Justin talking.
Okay, so now we're gonna talk about more time. Jason, you queued me up a little bit earlier when you mentioned that, this group is ultimately gonna have to go out and introduce these concepts to the community and kind of, sell the citizens of Issaquah why this whatever your plan is. Oh, I'm blocking the camera. Sorry. So I want to talk about what a timeline is in terms of actually that communication effort, because that's also something that's going to happen before any of this work starts. We won't be able to, even if we walk out of here today with the task force making recommendation that this is what the city has to do, which we're not going to do today. But if we did, no shovels are breaking ground tomorrow. There's a communication effort. So I'm going to walk in front of the camera. We are in here. If we were to go to a ballot measure, this ideally is about a 2-year effort. That orange education effort, if there were to be a ballot measure referred to voters, would be about a 10-week thereabouts intense efforts to inform the public of why this ballot measure was recommended and what's included in there. So before that is to happen, you want to have just short of 2 years of consistent community conversation. So that's a host of things, and we're gonna make recommendations in the community engagement packet that, comes as part of our deliverable. But that's things like, going to farmers markets. This is going to council with your recommendation. This is, what all sorts of, the different public avenues. This is your, Kiwanis, your, all your Rotary, whatever associations happen to exist here in the community, going before them and explaining to them why this recommendation was made, all the work that went into this recommendation, and why the task force believes this is the right option. Can you move ahead on slide, please? So, what that conversation is doing, identify the project's goal and vision. The people on this committee are here for a reason. A lot of you're people who are invested in this community and have an understanding of what the issues regarding the police facility, city hall facility. But there's lots of people in the public who don't or aren't thinking about this on a daily basis. And so, you need to not just tell them why you're making this recommendation, but why there is even a problem. A lot of people don't have any sense of all the data that you just digested in terms of, the public safety issues at the existing facility. The lack of space available to city hall staff and union staff. So going out and talking about that. It's, as I mentioned, conveying the history of work already done. Ultimately, it's really important that if there is a ballot measure, that the public understands that a lot of work went into this on your part, and it wasn't just council deciding, well, this is what we. Ultimately, this should be, council has to make a recommendation, it will be council's call, but council should be acting on your recommendation and not acting in vacuum. We need the public to understand that that's what happened. Soliciting honest feedback. So, take this out to the public, and if everybody says this is a really bad idea, then, we have to come back to the table and rethink things. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully your plan is something the public can buy into. You want a broad audience, so it's not just going out and talking to, people who are going to be supportive of the project. The city's duty, if there is a bond measure, is to be completely impartial, just to inform the public of what the options are. And that's what we need to do, is take this to everybody and give them a sense of why this recommendation was made from the task force and what the options are. And then incorporate that feedback as we, solicit that honest feedback, pull it into the plan. We should be able to hone it as time goes on. And we have to be able to answer the public the why question. Why are we doing this? And if we're not doing anything, what happens? There's whys on both ends. Why do something? Why not do something? And what are the implications of both? Any questions on any of that so far? Slide. So what is a time frame for an election? And I'm not putting these dates up here to push. We should have a ballot on the 2026, in May of 26. I think that's probably, council would probably think that's premature. Just to give you a sense of what these timelines look like, and these are the next elections. It makes the most sense if there were to be a ballot measure to put that on either the general election or the primary election, because you do need turnout, and if a public safety sales tax works forward, which doesn't sound like is the desired route right now, but if that were to come into play, that can only be done on a general. So I would recommend avoiding your special elections, like calling a February election. So what that looks like, let's say there was something on the ballot this November. August 1st is the last day to file a resolution. So that means, not only does the task force need to be done with this recommendation, city council has to have decided that this is the right thing to do, have all of its ducks in a row, and send that, provide that to the county clerk by August 1st. So you can see that there's really, that's not a lot of time. So I would say, November it's just not feasible. And, if you were to look at May 2026, May 1st or something like that, it needs to go to a county clerk. So just trying to give you a sense of what a timeline looks like. And really what, I mentioned a 10-week process in terms of communication. That's when your plan is already baked. The measure has been referred to the voters. You know, that resolution has been filed, and it's just very hardcore. This is what's on the ballot. And just trying to raise awareness as much as you can, but there's got to be a big grassroots effort to make people aware of the work that you've done long before that. Because really, once ballots get mailed, you know, it's largely done. It's about turnout and not necessarily, you know, flipping people's opinions on anything or getting people to embrace a bond measure. It's, you know, that you want to get people to understand why you make this recommendation. Any questions on the, yes?
Just real quickly, so if I'm hearing you right, turnout's key. Next year's the midterms, wouldn't that make more sense than even a May or a primary date? Actually, I know no one's gonna want to hear that, we're gonna wait a year, some odd months, but that's the election, you're gonna have more turnout.
Yes.
Than any election this year or the beginning part of 2026.
When we, that's a great question. When we are working with public clients who have their own measure, encourage from a turnout standpoint, yes, your primary election your midterm election or a presidential election are when you're going to see, you know, your biggest voter turnout.
So timeline questions, first, if that's the 2026 election, August election day. Is there?
Sorry, that, yes, that should be August 2026.
Okay, great.
Yes.
The second, that's going to be the second one, on the previous slide with the arrows and the timeline, I thought you said from like now to the ballot measure was about 2 years. This is a little over a year.
Yeah.
Did I miss?
No, you didn't miss anything. I'm saying if you, just trying to give you an idea of what some of the, like, you can push this out another year into 2027. And you know, these dates are pretty much going to be the same. You know, election day is going to shift, move up every day, you know, another digit. No, I mean, you could put something, like, could you do it? Would I recommend putting something on the ballot this November? I don't know, but I mean, like, it's doable. I think.
We've had clients who've done it in the past.
Yes.
Oh, not successfully. but
Yeah,
they have.
yes.
It's going to line up.
Yes. If you don't want to waste your time here, I would recommend the 2-year effort. Any further questions on what those timelines look like? Okay. All right. Now we, Miss, you asked if we were going to vote on it. That is what we're going to do today. So, yes.
Can we just go back to the time frame? So
Yes.
you're saying 2 years just to get to election day?
2 years to get to, you thereabouts, and that 2 years is including the work that's happening.
Okay, and if the bond successfully passes, when do you actually get the cash?
Good question. Well, I mean, I don't have the answer I can't answer that question off the top of my head. Well, no, it's a great question, but you also, there's work that there is work that will have to happen before you're spending any of that money. If voters elect to approve a bond measure, and we can come back and give you an actual answer on this, but if voters approve a bond measure, the time of when you get your money won't hold up in terms of breaking ground.
So we're looking at 2 years, successful bond pass, and then 3+ years for all of that.
Yes, so really, like, this timeframe comes before the timeframe.
Right, but you could say, start your A&E selection before the bond selection, and then hire the moment the bond passes, so you're compressing those times down, right? I wouldn't recommend hiring the A&E prior to the bond passing, because it gives people a bad taste in their mouth.
Yes.
But you can do a lot of the selection ahead of that. If you were gonna go to CPAR, you could do that, you could hire a consultant that just helps you get through CPAR. And if you were gonna go to do an alternative delivery method, you could do that ahead of the bond.
You just can't make any financial.
Don't make any
commitments.
financial commitments.
Yeah.
People
Right.
get all kinds of persnickety about it.
Yeah, there's nothing that legally would prevent you from bringing on board now and starting to do some of this work. But what that says to voters is you are assuming that they are on board with this and that will really turn.
Some jurisdictions have had the whole design done, waiting for the bond to pass. So they put out all the money to design the project, waiting for the bond to pass, and then sometimes it doesn't pass.
Yes.
So
April?
Actually, what I was gonna ask about the consultant selection and. Thank you.
Sorry, I shouldn't comment.
My question is actually for probably a little bit more Zach and Tola, but if that was to be the case, and we really did want to make an effort with City Hall, because the police are constrained now, is City Council even capable, Tola, to like the councilmatic thing you meant earlier, to do the leasing portion so City Hall can move out?
Well, moving, I'm not sure leasing would require councilmatic debt. The council has an insanely huge councilmatic debt capability. And we're using less of the fraction than we've ever used before. But of course, it has a cost, as we've discussed, right? Leasing is just like with cars, you know, the thing you do if you actually want to have the least cash go out of pocket, right? I want to be careful what I say because I've said things on camera about my opinion about leasing. But yes, we could. Yes, we could.
I don't want you to put it in the spot. I know we're kind of talking about, like you
Yeah.
said, about a year and a half towards if we were going to go for the 2026 midterm elections, that's November. So about a year and a half. And then, but if we were concerned about our police, and like you said, some of those safety and structural issues.
I will say some council would want to be very, very clear that the lease train would have an end. Right,
sir.
Some council members would be concerned that once we got into a lease, just like car owners, once you get into that lease, it's pretty easy to stick with lease payments. And then 10 years from now, you don't own a car.
That's good.
Some council members might be concerned.
Right, I just, like I said, it should be one way to kind of keep that ball moving and council themselves have the authority to do something like that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's not just the leasing part, obviously there's expenditures in moving an operation that big. Obviously, somebody that to pick up that tab, but at least it gets the ball moving. Because we know city council or city administration and the IPD need to break up. And going for the board. So we know that. And like I said, I guess the only thing that would be a little concerning, you mentioned it, is does that send the wrong message to voters? I would hope not, because they already, I mean, the city administration has their own space issues that they need to address. It's not just the PD, but obviously it's the PD more for the safety aspect. So it'd just be another thought, like I said, because if we were to do the year and a half plan, it'd be nice to at least see some effort there for our police officers and obviously for the city's staff and everything as well.
By doing some free leasing and getting that ball rolling. Yeah.
Well, total, I don't think that, so I understand your comments that the propensity to stay in the lease wouldn't exist if there was a brand new building being built. Right?
That's what I mean by it.
Right.
I think it would be the council that you would really want to have the whole package in front of the council. So you address certain council members' concerns.
I got you. Now I understand your comments.
Hey, we've got two other comments and then maybe.
Yeah. Great.
Some sense.
So is there an option? I mean, there are some things like the windows, that front, you know, area of the police department. You showed some doors that were funky. Those don't seem to be $50 million fixes. Are there some things, like, is there a list of 5 things that with existing funds or a small councilmanic bond would actually make a difference for the police department, like now?
My only comment is, I know that it's a big cost to make that front counter holistic, like proof, glass proof, that thing. And we don't know if that's where the stay, I think that's only because it's, but it hasn't been taken care of already, right? The door situation, maybe that would be an easier fix, the front counter, that's the bigger expense. That's probably why I think that.
Yeah, just thinking in terms of what can we do? Like, and not because otherwise, no matter what, it's 2 years, 3 years before it happens in this
that doesn't make sense.
Just as a comment too, I think over the years, facilities has really worked to accommodate a lot of what we can do, and we've tried. And you see some of that, I think, throughout as we get feedback from PD on what can help their operations. But we're just kind of at a point of,
That's not.
yeah, we've band-aided it enough that, yeah, we're at that kind of turning point, so.
And when you're spending, some of the improvements are, it's not $5,000 or $20,000, it's $100,000. And if you don't know that that's the permanent investment, do you want to be using the public's money to do that?
Yeah, Jason kind of hit most of my spots. I was thinking same thing, that with this 18 months to 2 years for you to get a bond published and or get to a vote. And that doesn't address the urgency of PD at all. It means we're sitting here for another 18 months to 2 years doing nothing. And then if the council was willing to do the lease space to get the administrative people out of the IPD building, then that gives them at least something to work with moving forward while the rest of this process is grinding through the system. So that was going to be my question to the council members is, is there a willingness to look at that orthogonal to this other stuff? Because it does address some of the immediate IPD. And there's probably some things that can be done to make some of the bare minimum improvements that need to be made, like the counter stuff, even though you know how much it's going to cost, but those things can be done once the year out. It's badly for sure, but otherwise you're looking at another 2 years before anything can happen. And that just doesn't fit my definition of emergency.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it's really clear that even some of these Band-Aid solutions, we would need to find new revenue sources. We do not have change just sitting around. If we did a councilmatic bond, we would have to commit new revenue to pay off debt service, right? So we can just go out and have a bond. And yeah, it would be really difficult, even if we wanted to lease starting tomorrow, like we would need to do some work. There's this new, what's it called at the state level, this new like criminal justice public safety sales tax.
Yeah.
So like perhaps that in combination with impact fees could help us in the first couple of years, but we would need to think long-term about like spending that already. How long could we withstand leasing? Do we have enough? But good ideas.
Just a quick question, I know that we just sold, did we just sell the city hall building?
Yeah, City Hall Northwest.
Yes, right, okay, so.
Yep.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Congratulations.
So we sold City Hall Northwest. And the proceeds of that building are very much earmarked for facility improvement.
This is that to your point, which I would assume is the case, is that the jump on if you somehow can manage to lease right away, well, what happens if you lease right away and the bond fails? And then now you shake up everything, move it around, move people into a temporary space, and now you're stuck in a really bad position and no bond to pay for anything. So I think that I assume is part of the fear of jumping too soon at that. And it's like the urgency is important, but without a full plan on this stuff, and everything will fall apart in your face.
That's always going to be the case with it, because the bond is a vague with no guarantee. And, and I've been the first one to say that this is not a good time for any government agency that's to come up with yet a new tax on the populace, because, the feds, the state, and the county they've already taken as much of that pie as they possibly can. And we're trying to find a little sliver someplace that people will accept for their hometown. And that's, I believe, that's a pushing a rock up the hill problem.
I think we probably should move on to more strategic questions and not. I think we can keep going around in logistics and stuff, but let's move on to the dot exercise.
Thank you, Eric. Yes, so dot exercise. So let me explain what we're planning to do. So I think in some cases, I think we have a pretty clear idea of where the task force sits. In some cases, maybe not so much. I mean, it seems like there's a there's a pretty clear consensus in this room that we need to address, police needs, space, function needs as quickly as we can. Some of these not so much, and so we want to start to take a little time to place dots, to do some prioritizing, to get a sense of where this group is and be able to get a sense of where we are. So, we've got up here 7 options in space 4 and 8. So those seven priorities that we have on the board: address police space and function needs, locate City Hall in Old Town, maximize the use of city-owned property, co-locate customer service counter with City Hall, site City Hall near other services, parks, public open space, phase implementation to fit within needs, and provide community meeting space. Is there another priority that this task force needs up there? Or does that cover it?
That's a big lift.
Just a quick clarification on the phase implementation to fit within means. Is that saying we're not going to add any additional funding through a bond? Is that what that means? Or just, I mean, obviously we got to do that. No matter what scenario you play forward, you've got to be within means.
I think it's.
I think we should.
But it's more like pay as you go.
Yeah,
is what
I
we
think that
heard-
would be
what we
without a
heard from the
bond.
last
It would just
meeting.
be, we got to make people focus.
Yeah.
Even though we're already lean.
I mean, I'll ask the group, I think there's another here, which is phase implementation to minimize operational impact to the idea. I think that there's a lot of issues around maintaining it. We have a small force, right? Typically have 1 squad on at a time. Operational impacts could impact their ability to protect public safety. And so I think that there's a wash and rinse on this, in a conversation with the chief to understand the options that we talked about earlier, the operational impact.
Yeah, just be, thinking in terms of, we have a building that's 25 or 30 years old. Thinking about not being in a position in 25 or 30 years where everyone is just as cramped because of growth, and being aware in design location, things like that, that there may be an opportunity to expand media and just having that, because I'd hate for this, the 30 years from now, this group having these same conversations. It would be a lot easier if they could say, wow, it was actually considered earlier, and the location design, whatever, is easier to work with than what we're dealing with now.
To plan for future growth.
Plan for future growth, plan for, 20, 30 years from now. What, how we're gonna make it easier for the city then. Just let them know.
It's currently built into the space plan.
Yeah, let's build into our space assumptions.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And then in terms of the other recommendation in terms of phasing to, phasing being most considerate to operational concerns with police, is that, and I'm asking, this is not a leading question, is that not covered in address police station function needs ASAP? That's a question for you now. The task force.
I'll take a whack at that. Oh, sorry, Karen's.
As far as anything missing, one of my top priorities are the City Hall employees having an adequate office space and home. Is that implied within locate City Hall or? Is that on that? Are they included in these priorities, or should it be address City Hall?
Just generally, I think, because we're saying we do need city hall space.
And they would be.
Yeah, again, that's built into the space needs.
There's down corners.
My name is Anand, if folks are considering how to pronounce my name.
Is the priority list that we have here independent of whether the bond is going to pass or not, or is,
Yes,
so it's just like a general priority?
yes.
We're hoping that to distill, it's so much, we're trying to distill this down into some priorities that we can then come with a few options that again are tangible for you to have some more of that discussion.
Yeah.
So we're just kind of looking for some direction. So instead of DLR doing 20 options for us to really chew on, is it, 3?
Right, what this is going to do is this isn't going to, we're not gonna walk out of here with one option after today. What this should do is sort to give all of you an idea of, all right, this is what our key drivers are. And that is going to allow us to build out a couple of options from there.
So this isn't just for one more, this is not just the, like, I'm gonna go stick as many dots as I want on the ones I like the most. We're asking you to rank them in order.
Yes, so
Right, what is my first priority, second priority, third priority in terms of these?
Yeah.
Statements.
So we have, here, before I talk through this, are we adding an 8th or not? We don't have to. This is.
Just a follow up on that, should we consider having an action plan for the bond is possibly not going to pass? Should we try to curate the existing resources we have? I know this is just a priority list, but should.
I think that's, yeah. I think that would be covered by your phasing implementation.
Just really quick on the points about meeting future needs and then the operational, kind of maintaining the operational continuity as this all happens. I think those are factors, depending, no matter what scenario you're putting out there, those are factors that will be drivers in how you set it up and deliver it. So, because there's going to be lots of moving parts when you're, moving police and modifying buildings, there's a building in a building. And it's when the planners are going to figure out, how do we deal with this? Because you got to work with staff as you kind of go through that exercise too, and figure out who's moving when, and how do you hooking people back up and all the rest of that. So I think those are assumptions that are just baseline in no matter what scenario we advance or scenarios we advance, that those would be driving factors for me.
That's the question. Is there any interest, or where would locating City Hall elsewhere in the city be? Is that not of interest?
We tried to pick one to see how much this would fall flat or be high as far as Old Town or not. Yeah, yeah.
Right, so if it's a lower priority for you all, then other places in the city would be.
You'd be open to it. Yep. Yeah.
So the reason that I think it is worth considering listing separately about this operational question is I'm saying specifically about 2 options, and one costs more money, but it has less of an operational impact. Do we specifically want to communicate that that's important? And the reason I ask is council sat in this room at one of our recent offsites. He said that the most important issue from the city right now is public safety. And, we continue to operate that way. I'm not saying you spend 3 times as much money so that, whatever. But I think that saying, look, it will come down to options of, what's more expensive and what's less expensive, and having a record that this operational issue is important. We have a tiny police force. Like, if you don't know, we only have, 48 uniformed officers, 46?
Yeah, I think it's actually 44.
Yeah, like that's our total uniformed police officers. So everything that we do, everything in collective bargaining and in the programs that we offer for the police department, it's all around maximizing the operational efficiency of this really small police force for 50,000 people or 40-something thousand people. And we have one of the lowest officers to population ratios in the United States. If you list 1,000 cities in the United States, we are like 990. I'm not kidding. I'm not being hyperbolic. Out of 1,000 municipalities in terms of officers. So it's really critical that we do all that we can to give them every advantage for the number of officers that we have. to project public safety. So that's why I think it's worth considering specifically calling out this operational issue, because down the road, it will come down to dollars.
Councilmember Marks, though, would that not be addressed in the first bullet point?
Now, that's, as soon as possible is different than operational issues. You could go in and do this as soon as possible and have a huge impact on operations, right? Depending on how you do it. You get done quick, we could if we had to. If we had to be done in 12 months, we'd be done in 12 months, but it would be horribly impactful.
So maybe we could change the wording of that that police is the priority, like minimal impact, biggest priority, or something to that effect.
Or we add that.
Yeah,
okay.
You have enough dollars.
Yeah.
We have 8 numbers.
Paper. Okay. If you want to write that down.
Minimize operational impacts to operate.
Perfect.
There was a person down there. Can't see him.
Yeah, so, I mean, the first one is a function of time, the second one is a matter of performance.
Okay, so we are going to have 8.
Okay.
So what we would like you to do is take your time. These will all be up here on the windows. 1 is most important, 8 is least important to you. Doesn't mean it's not important, the priority rank. Ultimately your lowest score collectively is going to be the highest priority for this task force. Feel free to be comfortable talking with one another as you're up here. I ask you to try not to game the system. If your assumption is that, well, nobody else in this room really cares about this one that I'm super passionate about, I'm going to put the one that I think is going to do fine all the way at the bottom because everybody else will for it. Like, don't just vote honestly with where you're at.
Just to be clear, when you say the highest, you're not going to add up all the 8s and say that that's more important than all 1s.
Correct. We are going, yes. So if something here comes away with only 8 points, that means it was everybody's favorite, and that is going to be the #1 priority of this task force.
Lowest points are better.
It's like golf. Fewer
Yeah,
shots.
It's like golf.
Your #1 sticker is your #1 priority.
Yes.
That's good.
Okay.
I just want to make sure I understood before I vote. When you say phase implementation to fit within means, you mean financial means and.
Financial means without a bond.
Pardon me?
I think we said without a bond.
Or that you would phase it so that you are paying as you go.
Okay.
Right, that's what the discussion was at the last meeting was a lot about being very conservative. Just do what you can pay for.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay.
It doesn't rule out a bond. It just says you don't do it. You don't do what you need the bond to fund until you.
Okay. I'm going to pass out stickers. Yes.
You're gonna get.
You'll sell it out.
There's no market here. Okay. No scalping.
Tickets. Okay.
It's almost here, that's the truck.
It ran. It's just a different dots.
We didn't use my gold dot, so we just used the
But you said bull. Bull, like, they're fuzzy?
And so you use it.
Now I'm nervous that my spreadsheet's gonna work or not. It's gonna make the whole thing.
locating City Hall here or there.
April, are you done?
No, I'm sorry. You're researching my notes. Adding the eighth one. Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
Oh, so you did prepare.
I did.
You know what was helpful?
One person opened the email.
I know. It got scrambled a little bit.
Spreadsheet's gonna be out.
I'm 99.9% sure this stuff is ready to go. I didn't see that. I know.
And like, I wanna go hover, but I.
Symbolically, thank you for tolerating that.
Oh, gosh.
Can you believe the quick question?
We did
Your
18
big
to
brain on
16.
this one. So you said you worked on the traffic light for Providence Point, right? Providence Point is there. and the-
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you worked on that.
Well,
Or you cut
yes, yep.
Just curious what you think about this. Sucks about this is that when somebody's going across 220, we have to wait for the light to change. So traffic backs up for those of us trying to go down the road. They have to wait for the light to change and this person to go.
A lot of people that just drop.
That's Forest Village for me. We've got 7 villages. There's only time probably a couple of people.
But they're coming from Providence. It's just like they've been visiting or they're.
Yeah, the other 6 villages are over. Yeah. I deliberately bought all the way up to take a right. So it's really maybe going to
No, I am.
Oh,
Okay, I'm going out of there
A lot of people are coming back and forth this way. The only way the light breakers is if it times out, it's really slow. For some, for left to go up there.
Yeah.
It's like.
My husband's down there,
Traffic. To go
renovating
straight or take a left.
2 houses.
Yeah.
And so I'm
Right.
If you so much.
Renovating.
Yeah.
Houses for the job or something.
But this person can get.
So they're rentals.
And is there way
One,
more traffic?
one was a rental that was, for a friend.
I wonder if the next step would be
Ended up buying
some form
a
of
house.
trust.
And of course,
So I will,
like,
I will talk to somebody, but I also think it'd be helpful if you could.
so we decided to do, I know, some.
So that we can try to. Email it. Yeah, we will.
Okay. And then of course, the new house is a little bit easier for us. Well,
Here, you're ready for
Okay.
it, right?
we didn't tie that to that. So that ended up being pretty bad. If we ran into Sesame Street, I'm going straight.
No, I'm stuck.
Start opening things up.
Yeah, she was like, oh, and we kind of just.
All right, has everybody,
Taking notes.
has everyone voted? Sorry, has anyone not voted? 1, 2, 3. Okay, voting is closed. We are going to tabulate.
We have a 10-minute break.
Let me count thoughts.
While we tabulate.
So you're going down.
What?
You're gonna go talk about us.
Yeah, and today, oh yeah, because I shared it with you guys, the co-chairs, yeah.
Yeah, so it's through ICMA.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're paying for the thing.
No, it was this year. So that I'm just. Yeah.
One is.
Yeah.
So what's the start?
Yeah, so I'm visiting, visiting Val Francis Issaquah, Val estimated that it's retired 24 years. So they want to small meet and first of all, your infrastructure, and so there's one of the lessons are around selling responsibility bills, recovery. So they're supposed to tell me, like,
Yeah.
where to go. It's gonna be a while. It's gonna be bad. Yeah, so,
So I'm going with somebody else, because to me, I'm doing solo.
I'm solo.
Really?
Yeah, it's one of those where I just like pitch the idea. It's part of the fellowship, and then they have two panel. So we have those interest back to the ice making. Talk about conference. Outreach to the reader.
So, because I'm just thinking about this country. Hurricanes, storms, tornadoes. So that kind of.
Yeah, and it's something we gotta figure out here in this plot too. We just.
Well, this is getting higher on the list. Massive.
Well, and it's interesting because I've talked to the host a few times just to get ready for the trip. We share the same challenges, even though we're across the world.
Yeah.
A lot of these things. And so if you've already just been laughing. And we're all kind of dealing with some of the same issues. So anyway, I'm so excited. It's gonna be, as long as I got away from the feeling. That alone is like. 14. Yeah, I'm gonna wait together. Yeah.
I think about this. Participating in the meeting, and participating in the meeting, that goes back to the past. On the meetings. It's like fucking paper. So I'm like, I'm only a half hour into it. My God. I'm going another beer out.
We have one that's in play right now, can't talk about it. But at least on, it's the sign for the trip. Yeah, it was quiet last year. I mean, when we were doing the title, when stuff, checking things out. That was a serious year. This past year has been a little bit. It's mostly. I mean, when they rewrote, we kind of wrote ourselves down. The process. They say, yeah, the process is a whole bunch of, you know, uncertainty in the process. That's a problem. That's a big risk. So I can see why it's only
Having the same point of this. Responsibility. Yeah, look at our staff meetings on Mondays.
I mean, they probably know that. Yeah.
I understand because.
Definitely feel like they need a bit of, it looks pretty enough, yeah. Like I try to start talking. Just bring this up. So like how am I so planning to summer that stick around? So we, I tried to talk to my.
Yeah.
It's already.
They're gonna go on a safari.
It's
I'm not thinking you should care about this.
And then we was like, unfortunately, when I guess it's not on this. That's like.
Yeah, that will. Yeah, no, that's like honestly, that's.
I don't know how to talk to them anymore. Priority. It's gonna be. Part of the reason why we didn't get Mexico. I even know. Yeah. Like when you start getting. I got the time still. I know we have talked to them, but you know, far off. Complain about you.
I have all of this side.
At least I can at least try.
How would you?
She's trying to build some. She was actually, it's like a nice day. And like, he would go, I didn't know it today. No idea. I clearly play that way.
I really like great.
With like 70 people.
But I just imagine put it out.
Yeah, just like people why they just stay there for a bit and then leave. Yeah. It's not. You know, they're gonna make the outside, make stuff down. You're gonna using city.
Okay, so we're taking.
But, you know, I think
I would like it up here. I just want to be somewhere else.
I think that's gonna be.
you already live there, you know?
Yeah, you know.
I don't know, that Gregory Phillips Myers.
Facing into that.
Yeah.
Relationship productivity in there.
I want students to say that.
It's just like.
No.
Like just.
And, you know, really, and that's one of the things on the next words, what if you're a pretty girl?
That's close, it's like.
I don't know that,
You gotta, you gotta do your own work and get out of that.
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great, everybody ready?
here we go.
Good to know.
We're good to go.
We're ready. Drum roll.
Ready?
Wow.
So low score wins.
Vote for win. There we go.
Oh, there we go. All right, can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a very clear number one, and that is address police space and function needs ASAP. There's clear consensus that is the number one priority. After that, we want to maximize the use of city-owned property and phase implementation to fit within needs. And I think those two things go together. On the other end of the spectrum, the least important things, so I'm not saying they're not important, but the least important things among this group were locating City Hall in Old Town and siting City Hall near other services, parks, public open space. And I think those two things go together. So I think there really is a consensus in this room of what needs to be, or similar feeling, there is consensus in this room on what needs to be done and what options we need to explore. So just to read through all of these in order. Number one is address police space and function needs ASAP. Number two, maximize the use of city-owned property. Number three, phase implementation to fit within needs. Number four, minimize disruptions to IPD operations. Number five, co-locate customer service counter with City Hall. Number six, provide community meeting space. 7, locate City Hall in Old Town. And 8, site City Hall near other services, parks, and public open space. So what that sounds like to me is that this group clearly wants to deal with police space and function needs. It wants to be considerate of cost and maximizing the use of what the city already has. Wants to deal with and then, be considerate, make sure as we're doing this that we're being considerate of operations of police. And then these things go together. Locating customer service counter with City Hall and providing community meeting space, being thoughtful about what goes into City Hall. And then at the very end here is the location. Thoughts, observations, any surprises here?
I would have thought the location would have been a little higher. Not only the location in Old Town, but all the parks and open spaces. I would have thought that would have measured up a lot.
I think that's 0, 1, 2, 3.
Only gave us 8 buttons.
Yeah. Yep.
I think the first 3 tells a good story, like from a community perspective, not just where we are.
So, sorry.
No, I mean, Old Town siting, that's city-owned space, so there's maybe some overlap in there, and the solution may still be right there. And I'm trying to remember the apps of the city
Right.
stuff, we're like.
Right.
Similar thought. It is about, okay, want to address all those operational needs and do it within means. But it's like, okay, where? I mean, it can't happen without some expansion of space. There's not enough space in the village. So then you dive down to the bottom of the chart and say, okay, now where do we do it? Still with the touchstones above about, want to maximize use of city facility or city property, owned properties, and address the operational needs. Both for City Hall and customer service.
But for example, if the most effective use of city funds is Pickering versus Old Town, this still aligns with that, right?
I see the first 4, the highest or lowest scores, really are all about this group feeling that we're trying to be responsible, right? maximizing use of city property, addressing urgent needs, phasing the need within means, and trying to minimize the impact on operations. And the rest of it is, nice to have stuff. But I'd be curious to know what you think the next steps are, given these results.
Well, we are. Sorry. Yes.
I just thought it was interesting that, I can't see if they're, my eyesight's not working very well tonight. Or pretty much any other night, but anyway. Where did, locate City Hall next to open spaces? Where did that fall again? That was 7 or 8.
Last.
Yes, that's not, okay. So yeah, that's what I thought. It's interesting that this group came up with that when in the public survey, that was one of the top wants as well as parking, but I'm just wondering why there's such a dichotomy and actually why does the public want City Hall next to open space? Are they gonna go apply for their permit or whatever and then go to the park?
All day.
Well, my opinion on that is, I think it goes back to the sort of civic campus concept. That the city hall is in a setting where other activities are taking place. So
Yeah.
Paul, I didn't mean to.
Well, I was gonna answer the question, it's like, that is also what I want. I want a city hall down in Old Town and it all together, and it's what I ideally want. But now that I'm faced with all the data and when I'm forced to prioritize something, I did put it more or less in this kind of priority, and then the public doesn't have this data, and it's what we kind of have to teach them is that. And then look, it might work out because I do think the best city-owned properties are next to parks and things. So I think it actually will work out that way. It's just when forced to pick something, this is where it falls out for myself. And once you have the data,
Exactly that, wants versus needs, and we've been presented with a different style of question.
So, related questions so when the recommendation goes to council and then for the bond, would that be for a specific plan and location? Or is it more general, or does council have more general, like here are the 2 or 3 options, and then the bond is specific, it will be at every one?
I can help answer that. I think a lot of this in the end is up to what this group would like to propose, but I think having some priority and menu of options for the city and for the council is helpful because there's a lot, you can tell there's a lot of play here and something could change here in the next few months or whatever that is. But having some of these criteria that are more rated as far as what the priority are helps with cobbling together what those solutions are. So that's just my initial thought. It's not like it's either City Hall and Old Town on this property or nothing, but this would be our ideal, right? And here's the number 2, or here's what those things are. And so we've been talking to DLR about taking a lot of this information now and coming back to you with 3 options that reflect what your priorities are. That way it's tangible. We can put some really rough order of magnitude dollar amounts behind it. We have a sense now of the timelines a bit more, but to see those all packaged together, I think would be helpful because we kind of went back and forth on going too much in the details versus what our priorities are. So.
Yeah, this gives us real marching orders.
Great. And then my other related question, getting at what Mr. Jason was saying. Boy, if the public was saying we want this, then the messaging is that we're being really fiscally responsible in a way that gets, and thinking about the high school bond, it's $600 million. Yeah, we can do it for 200. Wait a minute, what? Or whatever those numbers were. So making sure that, and that's a messaging question for down the road. But yeah, I think that we can tell the tools to work, but do not have the public think like, wait a minute, we said this, why are you doing that?
Well, and this should help you when we bring options back to you. It should help you in terms of coming to a consensus on what to recommend to council, whether that's just one thing or whether it's a couple of things. being able to prioritize what's most important there. I mean, if so much of this is about being fiscally responsible, you're probably not going to take the Taj Mahal option, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to say, and I'm looking forward to what you do with this, back with some more options, what we continue to do as a group. This is incredibly important. This is one of the best single slides to come out of a public process that I've seen in 16 years. I just think it tells that. Yeah. That a public group with tons of, different experiences and engagements in the community came back and told such a coherent story is really powerful for the council. Sometimes the council will get like, choose option A, not options B and C. But this gives us background as well. So thank you.
Good job to all of you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just want to throw a rock into that one. Well, I was just chatting with one of my neighbors here, and I was thinking to myself how I look around this room and I feel like our demographics in this group are really swayed, not representative of the city itself, as it is today. And just a comment. Nothing we can do about it. We're the people here, but I hope this reflects what everybody else in the city thinks, because I'm volunteering with the school, and I noticed that the school demographics are quite a bit different than what we have here. Sure.
Right. Well, and I think it was what Justin talked about. This is the start of an engagement process that is then only going to evolve and continue as we have some of these marching orders, right? And we provide this recommendation to the council. A big part of the next steps would be a lot more engagement with the community, but we needed something to come with, right? As far as something for people to react to, because see how much time it took to get all this information out for everybody. So coming to the community with examples or with what those priorities are and seeing how that resonates is important.
Yeah, this is, to go back to that timeline that I showed you, we're really early in that 2-year process. It has to start somewhere, and you did, and you really come up with, there are clear priorities here, and so that very first feedback that I shared, like an actual story comes out of this. It's impressive work on all that all of you did. We appreciate it.
I think it's really important to be able to show how we came up with the options that we take to council. And so this, right, we should be able to kind of draw the lines connecting what we end up with. And then your discussions about that, which is what the priority is. Now, if somebody totally disagrees with this ranking of priorities, then yes, there certainly may come up with a different option. And that's.
Being controversial.
Yeah.
No, that's where community engagement comes in and providing feedback and input. If you see a demographic that's not represented here in the city, strongly saying X, Y, or Z, like what you ranked as number 7 should be number 2, then the willingness of the city to make that change is what needs to happen in order for the public to really trust that you're listening.
We have time for a couple more comments and then.
Yeah, thank you. Eric, this might be a conversation for later, but I was just curious, since now that we know that locating City Hall in Old Town is less of a priority, will there be a time that we'll discuss or even vote on where it should be located? That's the first question. And then the second part of that question is that if it's determined that it should be in Old Town and even on the site of City Hall South, in the last meeting, there was some discussion about the city taking over the property that's the antique building. And I was curious if the city has any rights of eminent domain to do that. And also, is that building on like a historical register or anything like that?
It's not that. Yeah.
Yeah. City Hall South.
It's not that.
I know. Yeah. We can get back to you on those answers. Yeah, I think that's a larger discussion.
Okay.
You know, one of the things that I suggest, since we have our kind of like top four, you might want to have a slide or like a side by side that says, this is what the task force scored it as, and versus the, you know, our employee or not, the community survey, their top four, just so we have a comparison. Because where I think we might, and can't remember what we scored, but like meeting space might be where we ranked it lower. That might be, to your point about demographics, that might be a strong need. That they don't have bigger, you know, apartments or things like that, but they can't have meeting spaces.
Yeah.
Gathering spaces.
Yes. This might be like a suggestion or something that, or open suggestions. How are people trying to source more feedback or reaching out to their communities? Because even for the survey, like my HOA just like was against digital solicitation, like I got shut down. So I'm with that gentleman over there, like I wanted to, the best thing we can do is kind of like just reach out more and get more people to get opinions on this. So is there like some kind of messaging that you would recommend for like condensing this piece of information? I think we talked about this before, but like really getting this to reach more people and then having their opinion on it. So
Yeah, I think part of the scope of this work is the prioritization recommendation council, and a lot of that is what do we do around community engagement? So what is this group, you know, what are some of your feedback on how we best engage with the community? Because we have an amazing amount of your time to study all of this and to see what the problem is and be able to articulate that and distill it down to the community is going to be challenging. So it'll be, I think it's something that we'll talk about in a future meeting, is specifically around community engagement and what some of your recommendations are the city should do moving forward.
Yeah, so we will help you with that as well as an actual what to present to, how you not only who to go talk to and where to go talk to them, but what to talk to them with or about.
We are about a minute and a half over our time limit here. Our next meeting is on Thursday, June 12th, 6:30 p.m.
So a quick note on that. We've been talking with co-chairs and with DLR. The cadence of these meetings come quick. Maybe I don't know if that feels that way to everyone else, but it is for us. And as we work to develop some options, we may need some more time. And so, you know, one suggestion was we cancel our meeting on the 12th and then perhaps just continue our meeting on the 17th. That was the next date on our schedule. Or we may send out a survey and see if there are other dates, just to give us a little bit more time to come back with some real information for you. So if everybody's open to that, is that okay? Okay. So we'll be in touch later this week, kind of to clarify what's next as far as the meeting schedule, once we work with DLR and kind of how fast that can be turned around.
That's Tom.
No.
Oh, okay. All right.
Getting ready for the stuff.
We are adjourned at 8:33. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
You